This is Bill McMinn from Makeable Bible Church, and this is the Way to Go podcast, where we talk about faith, family, and daily life, putting the Bible into practical, everyday terms. Welcome to the Way to Go podcast. Bill McMinn along with Eric Barfell. And in this podcast, we like to talk about complaining. And one of the things I read a long time ago was that cynics have never changed the world. Mm-hmm. A cynic means that negative person who's just cynical about everything. They're not the person, it's the negative, the whiners. They're not the people changing anything. The world is going to be changed by people who think it can be and people who believe, and they're way more on the positive scale. They're the ones that are going to change it. And with that said, we definitely hear a lot of complaints in our world today. I mean, and granted, I'm guilty of it too. I'm not going to all come to this podcast and like, you guys are the only gripers out there, not me. No, I'll complain about stuff. For sure. You know, I'll say, tell my wife, I think it's always good to have someone to vent to and to talk to about something that's bugging you or grieving you a bit, right?
Yeah, because you see the price of literally anything and everything these days, and you can't help but like say out loud and express your disbelief, really. And is it complaining, or is it just like, oh my God, like, when something happens and you just have to talk about it? Yeah, that's the price of everything these days. And you hear it constantly.
Right.
Everyone's like talking about it. Oh my goodness, have you been in a grocery store lately? Personally, I can't, but like when I do, I'm like, oh my word, they're right. Like it's stupid expensive in here.
And I think there's a difference. Like when you have a substantive complaint, I think that's different than just being a griper and a complainer about every little thing. Substantive complaint, the Grecian widows in Acts 6 were not being helped. They complained about that and let it be known that they were being overlooked. And the church made sure they were not continuing to be overlooked because they saw it as a substantive complaint. And I never mind if somebody has a substantive complaint, for instance, hey, the heat isn't working right or AC's not working right and we're in church and we're all hot. I need to know about it. Or as Mark was saying earlier, we had a buzz and we started doing podcasts, we had a buzz. Well, he's not complaining. He's just acknowledging a substantive issue. Hey, this is something that needs to be corrected. If you're never home, let's say, and you are, but I'm just being absurd. Let's say you're just every night you're out riding your bike, you're going over to see your friends, you're out in the garage playing with a cat, whatever. And your wife then comes to you and says, I never see you and I miss you. And is that a substantive complaint? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Do you want me to answer that?
Yeah,
Okay.
It's substantive. Yes, dear. Yes, Bethany. I would not want to be without. Like you're thinking like the roles are spinning. Maybe not. I don't know. Do I need to spend time with my wife?
I didn't know if that was rhetorical.
No, it's not a trick question. Actually, it's just like, yeah, that would be substantive. And my wife came to me one time and said, hey, I feel like we're not spending enough time together on Saturdays.
Right.
I want to hear that. That's not to me the kind of complaining we're talking about. Some complaining is frivolous. It's just because you didn't get your own way. It's complaining as a lack of faith, like in Israel coming out of Egypt. We don't have enough water. We don't have enough, if God's not going to take care of them. They were constantly murmuring, constantly complaining. It just makes everyone around you miserable.
Yeah. No, we were in youth group last night, actually. We've been in a whole series, long story short, looking at the Exodus and Moses. And so last night we were talking about the Exodus out of Egypt, parting the Red Seas, that whole scene kind of thing. And yeah, they were complaining, wishing they were still back in Egypt, back in slavery, back in their oppressed ways.
Right.
And I mean,
at least we wouldn't die here.
Yeah. Are there not enough graves in Egypt?
Exactly.
I mean, what a backhand, like what a backhanded comment.
Right.
Wow. No, I remember, I guess I don't remember that line. I remember the story of they leave Egypt, they part the seas, but I was like, wow, some of these details. It's like, oh my goodness.
Well, what kind of complaining have you heard that you think, oh, golly days. Like, it's just negative. It's coming from a sheer negative spirit. And why I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I'll throw one in there. People who grew up in the area complaining about the area. I hate that. Or people who call Ashtabula Trashtabula. I don't like that. I don't like, this area rots. When I get older and I'm out of school, I'm leaving this place. And then they go and they tell all their friends how terrible the area is. And then they wind up moving back because they miss it. So it's just... Why are we so negative?
Every young person in their own hometown.
I could never understand what are you complaining about? There's a lot of I look at our area and I look at the great things. I look at the trails. I look at the elbow room. I look at Lake Erie. I look at lower taxes. I look at a lot of things. I mean, there are a lot of things. I like the people, a lot of things I like about Ashtabula County. Now, are there things I don't like about it? Sure. Probably would be true of anywhere I ever lived. Mm-hmm. I don't talk about that stuff. I'm not a downer. I could be sitting there looking at everything I don't like. I want to be looking at what I do like.
Right. No, I think it's different too. If you have things about whatever it is that you don't like, but you still get use out of it.
Right.
So for example, I rip on the Greenway Trail often. I also use it often.
Right.
And therefore I pick up on the flaws of it, opposed to just blatantly complaining and crying about it. And it's like, dude, you don't even use it. Like,
right.
Well, you don't have here's one way to complain. Don't use it.
Right.
You don't have anything to complain about because you're not in proximity of it. You
right.
know what I'm saying? Things like that. Do I wish it had some elevation changes and some like turns? Yes, absolutely.
Right.
But it doesn't. It's straight as an arrow and flat as can
because
be,
it wouldn't have worked well for trains, and it was built off a train bed. So
I understand that.
Right.
But I still use it all the time.
Yeah, because as a cyclist, you would rather some elevation gain and some hills and some challenge. Where for me as a runner, yeah, would I care if it had some hills? No, not at all. Yeah, but I don't mind. Right. I like it because it's so close, and I love it this time of year. I walked out there. I walked out there today because I decided, well, I might as well pray and just walk on the trail. So I'm out there walking. Oh man, it smells so good, and the leaves are falling, and it's getting some color, and it's so beautiful. So I look at that. I'm not going to be one who just like mosquitoes is something people complain about because they are eating us alive, and it is substantive.
Yeah. No, we going back. So you asked me what are some complaints. This is a kind of a low-hanging fruit, but there was a kid at youth group. He's been maybe 5 times in all the years I've been here. And we sell candy on Wednesday nights, and he's like, oh, this place is expensive. Everything's $1.
Right.
Like, has this kid ever seen a vending machine before? Because you ain't getting anything for as cheap as what we're selling it for.
Right.
And it's just like, okay, don't buy anything then.
Right.
I couldn't believe it's like, why are you like even telling me this?
Right.
What do you mean it's expensive? Go to your local. What school do you go to? Because you don't have anything for sale for as cheap as what it is here. It's just like.
But what if he spreads that report? What if he spreads a report? Eric, he's overcharging for candy. He's keeping the money. Eric's doing this. Eric's doing that, and other people start buying into it. Yeah, that Eric. That Eric is so That Eric doesn't even care about us. That Eric. And I'm being absurd. But it's not far off of what exactly happens in groups of people. And it's not far off of what happens in church either at times, where people just start spreading a bad report because they don't like something. So they want to make it look as bad and they want to just complain. And this goes into the Bible where Philippians 2:14, do everything without grumbling or arguing. Do everything. It says in 1 Corinthians 10:10, and do not grumble as some of them did and were killed by the destroying angel. Numbers 21:4-6, they traveled from Mount Hor along the route to the Red Sea to go around Edom, but the people grew impatient on the way. They spoke against God and against Moses, said, why have you brought us out of Egypt to die in the wilderness? There is no bread, there is no water. We detest this miserable food. Wine. And at some points, there really truly is a lack of faith. It's either a lack of faith in the team that you're playing with and the coach. There's a lack of faith in God at times. There's just, why do we lack so much faith? And grumbling sometimes paints that out. It's like you have no confidence in the system. I mean, and I'm telling you, I hear complaining has got to be a huge issue because it borderlines gossip. Like you're talking like gossip and complaining, and they can be pretty close, especially when it comes to grumbling.
Right,
absolutely. Murmuring. It's just a murmur. I love the word murmur. It's just murmuring. Just quietly murmuring about that guy. Them over there, they did this. They don't care. They didn't call me. They didn't see me. They didn't do. They could have done. They should have done. And it's this Monday morning quarterback mentality, just constantly.
Everyone acting like they can do it better kind of thing. And that's always driven me nuts. One of the biggest lessons I learned was actually from the movie Saving Private Ryan, where he says, he's talking about griping with all his guys. He's like, you gripe up. You guys gripe to me. I gripe. I don't gripe down to you.
Right.
And I think, honestly, that's always stuck with me. I think there's a lot of truth to it. Hey, if you have a complaint, like, don't complain if you're not going to be part of the solution.
Right.
And go directly to the person.
Gripe up.
Exactly.
Right.
If you have a grievance against someone, go address it with them.
Right.
I think that it shows a lot of maturity, and I think complaining behind and talking behind somebody's back shows a lot of immaturity.
Right. I agree. Right. And again, you're going to vent. You're going to have a bad day or somebody frustrated. You got your feelings hurt, so you go home. And I think it's good to have someone to vent to. And I'm not saying that I could never go and say something to my wife, but here's what I don't want. I don't want the kind of relationship where every day my wife knows that I'm going to come and complain to her, and she doesn't even want me opening my mouth. She's kind of avoiding me because it's so negative. And some people get to the point they can't talk without being negative. They would find the negative in the perfectly blue sky, sunny, perfect temperature day. They would find something to complain about because there's always something. Okay, if that's your mentality, you're going to be complaining forever because there's always something not perfect. It's not a perfect world. Right. I don't even want to look that way because I really believe it discourages people. Like, to be a nitpicker and a whiner and a complainer just discourages the group. So if I'm in a hike and I'm hiking with my family and it's a hard hike, you're not going to hear one word out of my mouth about it. I'm not going to complain about it. I'm not going to talk about the elevation. I'm not going to talk about sweating. I'm not going to talk about anything. I'm just going to get up the hill because anything, if I start, oh man, I don't know. So hard. What is everyone thinking about? Oh man, it's so hard. Yeah. It's so hard. Right. And they start getting discouraged because I'm telling them, oh man, this is bad. This is really bad.
Especially when they chose and agreed to tag along.
Right.
It's like, you don't have to.
Right.
I would like for you to, sure. But no, it drives me nuts.
It's not leadership. Leadership, because anyone can complain. Anyone can come up with ideas. As I had one friend said, he goes, look, ideas, dime a dozen.
Right.
And he would have a board of guys and they'd all tell him, you should do this and do this. He goes, I don't need ideas. Ideas are easy. I need solutions. Like, I need to know, how do we get from A to Z? That's what I need to know. Not just throw a billion different complaints and different ideas on me. That's not going to help. But I don't want to discourage. And James 5:9 says, don't grumble against one another, brothers and sisters, or you will be judged. The judge is standing at the door. And there's another verse in Ephesians that said, if you bite and devour one another, watch out, or you also will be devoured. And it's just this mentality that sometimes we have of just that gossipy, nitpicky, gripey complainer, this and that, because whatever, we had expectations that were unmet. And I think a lot of the complaints do come out of that as well.
Now, going back to what you said a moment ago about, having someone to vent to and stuff, sometimes I think it's a good practice to kind of evaluate your thoughts and feelings with somebody else. Like, hey, he just said this. Is this what you heard him say? How did you take that? Or like, am I overreacting to what my interpretation of it? They're like, oh no, I thought it was funny. It's like, okay, I guess it was just me.
Right.
I'll drop it.
Right.
It was misunderstanding. I'll chalk it up to that. Not a big deal. Versus, oh, I can't believe this was the decision made, and let's grab your pitchfork and torch and we're going to storm this. It's like, oh my goodness. Like, it just,
There's been,
like that.
I mean, I've handled a lot of complaints in my day, and there's always going to be complaints. I realize it's par for the course. I'm not the kind of person that wants to be known as a complainer. Right. Not saying I don't complain. Not saying I don't point stuff out, because I'm also part of leadership is seeing a spot somewhere. In other words, if I am buying this and it's a piece of pottery and I'm at a yard sale, antique shop, whatever, I have to evaluate it. Is there a chip? Is there crack? Is there anything wrong with it? I picked up a churn the other day. A lady goes, doesn't even have a bottom. I thought it was cheap. Yeah, it was cheap because the bottom busted straight out of it. It's worthless.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So there's no point in buying it. But that's up to me to evaluate. So sometimes when it comes to ministries, you are in the role as a leader to evaluate the ministry. Well, how did we do? And sometimes that requires, hey, we did great here, could have done better here. So next year, let's try this.
Yeah.
It's not being complaining. It's just being, no, this is part of your job, is to see where you could be better and not ignoring clear things.
Yeah. So. Not that I'm, above or beyond hearing feedback and being critiqued. But some people are just like, I didn't like that you did this. Okay.
Right.
Is there more? No, I just didn't like it.
Right.
Okay. Okay, dude. I don't know.
Typically, if it's not my thing, unless it's really strong, like, I don't think too much about it. Like, I don't come Sunday morning, hey, I'm here to critique Mark and all the singers, our musicians. And are there notes played? That's not even my area. I'm not even thinking about that. I'm not typically thinking about backgrounds on songs and
Yeah.
I'm not there to critique it.
Right.
I'm just there to worship. I'm there like everyone else. If something's glaring and Mark needs to know about it, like there was a buzz or a hum or something, then yeah, it behooves to say, hey man, I was not complaining. I just want you to know you got this going on, or hey, did you know this,
Yeah. Right. No,
Right,
again, I'm all for always improving. I'm glad people bring some of my things in my blind spot to my attention because it's things I don't see.
Absolutely.
Right. But at the same time, Yelp reviews are real famous for being ultra negative.
Right.
Whether it's a coffee shop and the reviews is the worst coffee I've ever had. It's like, dude, you're just one voice. I mean, literally, it would be things like they come to Eagleville Bible Church and they would comment, "I never saw one eagle." It's just like the dumb. It's like this is completely out. Like,
right.
It's so irrelevant. And those are the kind of voices, man. They just got to be silenced.
Right.
It's like that's not worth the price of candy. That's your complaint.
Some people are like born to complain, like they just want to be negative. But what I find is, and everyone scatters because no one likes constant negativity. No one likes that constant dripping, constant storm. You got to find some things to be positive about and just say, no, yeah, I mean, this was here. But again, if it's my area and under my purview, then yes, I have to be observant and pay attention and note things for sure. Yeah. But even that's not being a complaining griper because it's just not my nature to sit around and complain.
Yeah.
It's my nature to find solutions and to figure it out, because here's what I find, Eric. It is unproductive. You are accomplishing nothing by complaining about it. So like you said, I like to gripe up. So if I have something about Mark, me telling you and complaining about Mark is not helping Mark. It's just me complaining to you, and there's no good that's going to come of it. Because all I'm doing is just blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, yeah.
And no one wants to hear all that.
Yeah, exactly. No, even in my own prayer life, it's like, sometimes I feel kind of complaining when all I have is like requests. So you know what? I need to actually like pause for a minute and praise God and thank God for his goodness. I mean, his character, his faithfulness present in my life, all the things he has blessed me with. Sometimes I just don't think about any of that at all. And I go straight to, God, I need you here. I need you with this. I need a little more over here. And you know what I'm saying?
Right.
And it, to me, sometimes when I actually think about it, I'm like, probably comes off a little complainy. Right. The very things I don't like when people do to me, no affirmation, no gratitude, no encouragement. It's like, how often am I doing that very thing to God? Right. And so sometimes that hits me. It's like, I just got to praise God for a second here.
No, I'm with you 100%. I think, we definitely shouldn't be grumbling to God constantly. We should be, or even just doing requests, is what about thanking God? What about appreciating him? I try to be, God, I'm glad to be alive. I'm glad to see the fall colors starting to come in. I'm
and the
glad
more I
for
do that,
everything,
the less requests I actually have. Kind of puts things in perspective a little bit. Now, I'm sure I wish there was things a little different here and there from time to time, but I think people need oftentimes a perspective shift as well.
But I think too, sometimes you can really color, like you can really damage the team. Not only is it unproductive, it's harmful because you can throw a complaint out there and no one's heard the other side of it or the reasoning why you're doing it. As a leader, I just like to be trusted. To be honest, you know what I'm saying? It's like, maybe I didn't have a chance to explain to you every in and out of the decision, but there obviously we have reasons for switching youth group to Wednesday night being one of them. I mean, obviously there are reasons we had for doing that. Just one example of a decision. It's kind of nice where people understand, no, you've really thought through it. Like I was talking to Erin about it. She goes, I understand. Like when you guys are doing things, you've thought about it, you've talked about it, you've prayed about it, you've molded it all over in different ways to handle it, and this was the best way that you thought. She goes, but not everyone gets to see the process like I do. So, but that's where you want
candy prices on Wednesday nights have really gone down too.
Right.
More affordable.
But anyway, it's unproductive and it hurts the chemistry. And I think that we don't want to be the one sowing seeds of discord in people's hearts and lives, which really I've always found a lot of complaining just makes the job harder. Because it's just discouraging. People want to quit. And some people aren't as resolved as others, and they are going to quit. Like they're going to hear people complain. They're going to be like, hey, if I'm doing this and all you're doing is griping about it, see you later. Like I don't really need to be a part of this. I don't really need to give my time to that. That's why I think there needs to be a lot more praise and thanks and appreciation than criticism. But find solutions. I mean, what I would say to do, I would say find solutions. I would say hang with positive people. If you're negative, like I tend to like hanging around positive people. You can journal. And just, hey, if there's thoughts going on in your head and you're discouraged about things, I found a lot of help that way. I just put it on paper, put it in a journal, think about it, pray about it. Then you read it later and see how stupid it sounds. You know what I mean? To be honest. But I think that's a positive to do. And I think thinking positively too. Philippians 4:8, finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. Yeah. That's what you got to be thinking about. Don't think about everyone's like one negative. What about all the positives about the person? You know what I mean? Because we can bring our own selves down about marriage or friendship or anything else because all we look at is a negative instead of saying, well, yeah, I mean, definitely some negatives. No one's perfect. But look at all the positives. Look at all the great things about them. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. I'd rather spend my time focused on the great things, and especially about my county where I live, the church, and it keeps me upbeat, keeps me positive. And as you're positive and upbeat, you're going to accomplish more. Right. You're going to do more because sitting around complaining is never solves. It doesn't do anything. Exactly. So.
No, another thing, I was actually reading a book earlier today. It was like, if you have those negative thoughts, kind of like write down what you're feeling and kind of why. Why do you have these complaints? What's spurring that? Right. And then again, trying to switch your perspective, like pray about that kind of thing and pray that your mindset is more like the Philippians 4:8 and your focus is more of these things. 10 nuns ran past LA. That's how I remember that.
Expectations, man. I mean, that's a lot of it too. It's just if you have expectations of people, like, well, I expected them to include me here or ask me about this or say it this way, and then they didn't do it because they're not even thinking that way. I mean, they're like, mind's riveted on 100 other things, and for whatever's important to us is important. Right, it doesn't mean it's on the big priority scale of everyone else because they have all got their own things to be thinking about, right? So then I think we have to just change expectations sometimes. What is really realistic to expect of people, and it makes you happier too. Because when your expectations match reality, you're way more content. When they don't, and I've had that happen a lot of times in my life where I just had to change expectations. But again, it's always in that effort to stay positive, always in that effort to say, no, we can do it. It's okay. Look at the good things. I mean, I spent a lot of summer working and not a lot of summer kayaking. The positives, hey, we got stuff done and we'll be able to kick back and look this winter and, celebrate that and appreciate that. It wasn't the summer, that I normally expect to have, but it's the summer I did have and we're still being thankful for it. Exactly. So being positive. Yeah. So my encouragement is hear the verses that we've set out to you today. Don't be that grumbler. Don't be that nitpicker, that complainer. It doesn't do any good anyway. No one even wants to hear you complain. That's a fact. And stay on that positive. What is good is God doing? How is he working in the situation? What can you do to make things better? Those are the kind of things I would focus on. You guys all have a great and a blessed week.